I can't think of her name. Don't worry, we're getting to it. Oh, there we go.
USA's Safe Pilot rewards safe drivers with up to 30% off your auto insurance premium at renewal.
Over the last 100 years, life has changed dramatically in almost every way imaginable. The way we do literally everything, from shopping, to eating, to working, to sleeping, to communicating with each other, entertaining ourselves, and even taking care of our bodies, has been so dramatically revolutionized by economic progress that the average person today has a higher standard of living than even royalty did just 50 years ago. But the strange irony of it is that despite this, most people wouldn't consider themselves to be anything close to rich. There's this really interesting pattern that plays out in front of us every time a new form of technology or a new product hits the market, where initially it's extremely expensive and seen as an overly indulgent luxury that only the rich can access. Sometimes so much so that the general public even mocks the absurdity of it.
Sir? Yeah. Oh, my Viking gun. Well, maybe that was a little too hard.
But then over time, it becomes cheaper and more reliable and therefore more accessible to all of us normies. And before you know it, it becomes so common that not only is it no longer seen as a luxury at all, but it's seen as just a basic necessity that we struggle to imagine life without. But if you were asked to picture luxury, you'd probably think about something extravagant like an oceanfront mansion or a collection of supercars or a wardrobe full of designer clothes and high-end jewelry. But true luxury has never really been about the things that attracted attention. It's always been a lot more about the things that eliminated effort. For most of human history, basic day-to-day tasks like cooking, cleaning, and commuting took an enormous amount of physical effort. Like, it's really only been in the last century or so that things like grocery stores and cars and electricity and consumer appliances have been widely available. Prior to this point, something as simple as doing laundry, for example, could take up an entire day. But wealthy people always had the advantage of being able to outsource most of this labor. They could hire cooks and cleaners and gardeners and drivers, and that was luxury. Being able to pay someone to do something for you that you don't want to do yourself meant that you were in the upper crust of society. But today, those types of comforts and conveniences are not only accessible to the average person, but generally regarded as ordinary and unremarkable. Like, imagine telling your great-grandparents that you wake up in the morning and adjust the temperature in your home without even getting out of bed. Imagine telling them that you walk into your kitchen and brew a cup of cafe-quality specialty coffee with the push of a button, that your phone tells you what the weather will be like for the day and gives you the fastest route to work, that when you get home in the evening, the dinner you've ordered from your favorite restaurant is waiting for you on your doorstep, along with the groceries that you didn't have to shop for, and that you're going to eat that food from the comfort of your couch while watching your pick of literally any movie or TV show ever made. Imagine telling them that a robot cleans your floors, or that you can unlock your front door with your fingerprint. They'd assume that you are unfathomably wealthy, that you're loaded, but chances are that you're not. Those things are pretty normal now. Life is pretty cushy. But I have this theory that this overabundance of luxury is not actually a good thing. And not just because it's making us lazy or because a $40 DoorDash burrito is a ripoff, though both of those things are probably true, but it really goes so much deeper. I think that these small, seemingly innocuous luxuries are actually just serving as a distraction to keep us all from realizing what's really going on in the world, and specifically, just how badly we're being screwed. Hear me out. So, it's pretty widely accepted that the economy is not doing so hot these days, or at least it's certainly not serving the majority of people. Housing is outrageous, gas and grocery prices are soaring, people are carrying 5 or even 6 figures of student debt for degrees that they can't even put to use because the job market is in the trash. And in the US specifically, just getting sick could be enough to bankrupt you. Every year, the cost of living gets higher and higher, and most people's wages are simply just not keeping up, which means that their quality of life is steadily declining. A few weeks back, I made a video about the K-shaped economy we're living in, so I won't go too deep into it here, but the TLDR is that while people who are already well off are absolutely thriving right now and seeing their net worth consistently increase as the value of their assets rapidly appreciate year over year, the majority of the population is experiencing the exact opposite. They're seeing their buying power diminish as the cost of living outpaces their incomes. They're seeing their prospects of things like buying a home, starting a family, and eventually retiring slipping through their fingers. And they're seeing themselves being pushed closer and closer to poverty. Basically, the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer, which isn't anything new, but both are happening much faster than normal. And with each position becoming more extreme, the middle class has pretty much evaporated entirely. Like nowadays, you're either killing it or you're the one being killed, and there's rarely an in-between. To put this into concrete numbers, the top 1% of households in the US currently hold more than 30% of the country's wealth, while the bottom 50% holds just 2.5% by comparison. That's a staggering degree of wealth disparity. But then that also poses the question, why isn't anything being done to fix this? Like, if the economy, as it currently functions, essentially hand-delivers the entire pie to a small group of people while everyone else is left fighting for crumbs, and we outnumber that small group 1,000,000 to 1, why aren't we doing anything about it? We're about to do a deep dive into the current state of our economy and how it determines the quality of life that you and your family can access, but the biggest piece of this puzzle on an individual level is obviously what you do for work and how much money you make. Your work occupies a huge portion of your life, so having a career that not only pays your bills but that also fulfills you is essential to your long-term happiness and success. If you've been feeling stuck in your career, like you could be achieving more, or like you want to make a change but you just don't really know where to start, it's not just you. The fact is that the people who have the clearest visions of where they're going and who are the most successful at what they do, they don't get there by luck. They have mentors and coaches and people guiding them along the way, and you can have that too. Career coaching with today's sponsor, Strawberry.me, can give you the clarity, strategy, and accountability you need to hit your goals and reach your full potential. Maybe you're looking for a new job, or aiming for a promotion, or maybe you're looking for a fresh start in an entirely new field. Whatever you're after, the expert guidance of a career coach can help you identify the obstacles holding you back and build a step-by-step plan to help you get where you want to go. The timing will never feel exactly perfect, for anything really, but at some point you just gotta do the thing. So do it. Head over to strawberry.me/accordingtonicole or click the link below, or you can just scan this QR code to get 50% off your first coaching session. A big thanks to strawberry.me for sponsoring this video, and let's get back to it. The sad reality is that the policies and laws that govern our world and that ultimately control the economy are largely influenced by the very people who stand to benefit from them the most. Billionaires and corporations lobby our governments to allow them to do things like suppress wages and eliminate worker benefits and protections.
Get renter's insurance without calling your parents for help.
They lobby to ensure that anti-monopoly laws go unenforced so they can crush their competitors and price gouges with impunity. They lobby to secure taxpayer-funded subsidies and bailouts for their companies after they fuck shit up so that they never have to deal with the consequences of their own incompetence. And most importantly, they lobby to create tax avoidance loopholes so that the teenager working at the McDonald's drive-thru ends up paying a higher income tax rate than even the CEO of the company does. Just to name a few examples. And I mean, chances are that none of this is really news to you, right? Like, to varying extents, we're all pretty aware of how corrupt governments are. And if somehow this is news to you, just go look up the stock portfolios of US senators and congressmen. You can find them all over the internet. And tell me why someone like Nancy Pelosi, who at the peak of her career was earning $223,000 per year, somehow has a net worth of more than $250 million. It couldn't be because of insider trading, right? That would be illegal. But yeah, we all know that government corruption runs deep, and that billionaires pull all the strings and rig all the games to make sure they always win. That's not the question. The question is, knowing how vastly we outnumber them, Why hasn't there been a revolution? Why hasn't there been more widespread outrage? Why does everyone seem so content to just keep plugging along in a system that's specifically designed to chew them up and spit them out? The answer, I believe, is complacency. And complacency is achieved through pacification. While looking at your empty bank account or your climbing credit card balance should make obvious the severity of the situation you're in, it's really easy to tune it out when your life is full of modern luxuries. Like, really, how poor do you feel when you have a personal shopper doing your groceries for you? Or when you can bark orders at a speaker on your coffee table and have your lights turned on and off or your thermostat adjusted without you lifting a finger? How poor do you feel when you have an on-demand soft-serve ice cream machine on your kitchen counter or a theater-sized TV in your living room? As these types of products and services have become cheaper and more accessible over time, two things have happened. Number one is that they've become so normalized that they're no longer really even seen as luxuries, and so people are rarely even stopping to consider whether they truly need them, or more so, whether they can even really afford them. The result of this is that people are living more and more beyond their means in order to keep up with this new standard of living, which is making our bad situation worse, and we don't even see it, because we don't see these things as luxuries anymore. But even worse is that it's deceiving us into believing that we're doing way better than we actually are, so we have no reason to question the status quo because we don't feel how badly we're being exploited. What we're seeing is a system where the experience of feeling well off has become almost entirely detached from actually being well off. Most people today, even if they are in thousands of dollars of debt, have no idea how dire their situation really is because their day-to-day life feels pretty bougie. And as usual, the billionaires and the oligarchs, they get even richer while we're distracted. Now, before you accuse me of being a conspiracy theorist or whatever else, I want to be clear that I am not suggesting that all the CEOs and tech moguls gathered around a conference table somewhere and conspired specifically to hypnotize us with cheap shit so they could keep doing whatever they want. I mean, we all know that those guys only gather together for one reason, and it's to rape children in the Virgin Islands. As my friend Elon would say, girls for the win, am I right? But what I am suggesting is that they always have and always will continue to do whatever they want until we properly organize to stop them. And as long as we fail to recognize the extent of what's happening, we never will. And all of these consumer products and luxury services we use, in conjunction with the easy access to virtually unlimited consumer debt that allows us to afford them, makes for an excellent pacifier to keep us all docile. It's like giving a baby a lollipop while you vaccinate them, except instead of a pinprick in the arm, we're getting a giant screw up the ass. But boy, is that candy sweet. If people were forced to truly live just off of their wages, if they couldn't buy things when they didn't have the cash, if going out to eat or having dinner delivered when you're too tired to cook genuinely wasn't an affordable option, if you couldn't use financing to buy yourself a new car, if your lifestyle was entirely dictated by what you can actually afford, you'd be big mad all the time. And you should be. You'd be acutely aware of just how bad things really are. But now it doesn't matter if you have $1 million in the bank or if you're in overdraft. You can buy anything you want at any time. If you don't have the money, just put it on a credit card or pay for it in installments with Klarna. Worry about it later. You may not be able to afford a house or an education. You may not have access to healthcare. You probably won't ever be able to retire. But life today feels pretty good, doesn't it? I mean, your fridge is full, your apartment is clean, your car heats your ass as you drive, and all it's costing you is your future. And listen, it would be easy for me to go off on a tangent about how overpriced DoorDash is or about how much money you can save by making coffee at home or whatever else, and none of it would be entirely untrue, but it's kind of missing the forest for the trees. It's true that many working class people today are living far beyond their means. It's also true that many of the products and services that people routinely spend money on are in fact indulgent luxuries, no matter how normalized they've become. And while some people are just straight up irresponsible with their money, I can't help but feel that the increased reliance on convenience is directly tied to the burnout epidemic. People today are working longer hours than they have in decades past. Commutes are also longer as more people have been priced out of the cities they work in. Most families now depend on two incomes to survive, meaning that there's no longer someone at home all day to take care of the domestic labor. In prior generations, men would typically earn a paycheck while women cooked and cleaned and took care of the kids, and collectively everything would get done without either person burning themselves out. But now, both partners come home, and after working a full day and sitting in up to an hour of traffic in each direction, they still need to figure out what's for dinner. They still need to clean the house. They still need to grocery shop. They still need to bathe the kids and walk the dog and do whatever else needs to be done. So the need for shortcuts, the desire to outsource some of those tasks, to have just one less thing to worry about, it's understandable. But the part that's easy to overlook in the moment is that the more you use those services, the more you need to work to pay for them. And the more you work, the more you use those services, and it becomes this exhaustion-fueled feedback loop. And as I've talked about in other videos, I think that exhaustion and burnout are also being weaponized against us in the exact same way. The goal is to keep you in limbo, where you're too poor to quit your shitty job, too tired to find a better one, and too jaded to unionize, but just comfortable enough to not really think about any of it at all. And I think that needs to change. I think we need to think about it and talk about it a lot more. If you like this video, like the video, subscribe for more. You can follow me on Instagram at according_to_Nicole. Don't forget to check out strawberry.me at the link in the description or scan this QR.
Whoa, what's that?
I just built a budgeting app in Base 44.
Guys, Nina just built an app.
Impossible. Nina can't code. Interesting. Can it generate reports?
It can now.
Nice. So you're saying we can all build apps?
Okay, so this video is going to be a little bit different. This is going to be a story time about the stupidest thing I have ever done, and by far the worst financial decision I have ever made in my life. I'm telling this story as a lesson, I guess as an opportunity to show that even people like myself who are fairly financially savvy are certainly not immune to being impulsive and reckless at times. And I'm doing this with the hope that I can help to debunk some of the terrible financial advice that gets frequently passed around so that you don't end up making the same mistakes I did. This is a story of how I became house poor. So from the time that I was very, very young, I always dreamed of having my own house. And I'm not entirely sure where this initial desire came from because when I say young, I'm talking like elementary school age, like way too young for it to be relevant. But for as long as I can remember, I just always had this deep urge to have a place that was all my own. After I graduated high school, I made the decision not to go to university. And instead, I just started working basically minimum wage jobs, but I worked a lot. Like, if I wasn't getting full-time hours at my job, I would go get a second one. I had multiple side hustles on the go at any given time, and this continued well into my 20s. I was living at home at the time, but because I had chosen not to continue my education, the arrangement was that I had to be working, which, like I said, it absolutely was, and I also had to be contributing financially, so I did. Now, in all fairness, I certainly wasn't paying market rent, but I was paying an amount that was reasonably proportionate to my income at the time, and roughly the same as what it would have cost me had I split an apartment with a couple roommates. Beyond my bare essentials, I saved almost every penny I made. And so even though I was only making about $30,000 a year, by the time that I was 25, I had managed to save up $100,000. I've made videos in the past talking about that, and I've had people accuse me of lying, but keep in mind that $100,000 accumulated over 8 years is only about $1,000 a month, and that's even without investing it. So I was basically saving like 50 to 60% of my take-home pay. So by this point, it's 2018, I'm 25 years old, I'm living at my mom's house, and I have $100,000 in the bank. 2 years prior, I'd started a small business, so I was self-employed by this point, but my income still hadn't really increased much, and I was still side hustling and doing whatever I could to make extra money. But later that year, my business finally started to pick up some traction, and I started making closer to what was the median income for my area, which obviously still wasn't a ton, but it sure felt like a lot to me at the time. I started looking at some mortgage calculators, and I realized that with my $100,000 down payment and my new improved income, I could possibly buy myself a little house. And as soon as I realized that was a possibility, I became completely consumed by the idea. Now at this point, you're probably asking, well, why wouldn't you just rent a place? I had never lived away from home before, I was young, I was single, and I'll be the first to admit that I had no need for an entire house. But there were a few reasons. Number one was that, like many people, I was raised to see renting as throwing money away, which, as we'll talk about later, is an asinine perspective, but it's a common one nonetheless. But more importantly than that was that I had watched a few of my friends move into rentals, only for them to be forced out a year or two later because the landlord wanted to sell the place, or wanted to move their family into it, or wanted to renovate it, or whatever else, and that was the biggest thing to me. I have always, and I still do, value stability and a sense of permanence and control more than pretty much anything else. Like, I'm a huge homebody, and the idea that someone could force me out of my home at any time was extremely distressing to me. I know a lot of people in their 20s value flexibility over stability, but I just didn't. I also had Levi at the time, and so having at least a small yard was a non-negotiable to me. And being that I'm in the Toronto area, housing is very expensive, and renting a house with a yard would have cost me more than buying at that time, at least on a month-to-month basis. And also, I was worried that if I had to dip into my $100,000 to offset more expensive rent, I would never be able to save it back up to buy a house in the future because I still wasn't making that much. So the next year, in 2019, I made it happen. I was 26, I was about to turn 27, and I bought a little townhouse. And honestly, it was great. I loved it. It was modern and cute, and the bills were reasonable. My mortgage was about $1,900 a month, which, again, depending on where you live, may sound insane or very reasonable, but it's reasonable for here. And everything was Gucci, as they say. Fast forward 6 months, though, and now it's March of 2020, and we all know how that went.
Stay at home.
Stay home, stay safe.
Quite simply, stay at home.
In addition to everything else, It caused the housing market to go crazy. The house 3 doors down from me hit the market and quickly sold for $50,000 more than I just paid. A few more months go by, and another house in my neighborhood sells for $100,000 more than I had paid. It was madness. Also around this time, my business starts to really ramp up, as do my side hustles. So now I'm making what is still objectively not a ton of money, but more than I ever thought I could. Like, I'm easily paying my bills, and I'm saving and investing some money every month, which is especially easy to do when there's nowhere to go. For the first time in my life, I feel truly financially stable, and it feels great. But also, I'm home a lot more than I ever have been because of all the lockdowns.
Your team is waiting. Your vintage internet is still loading. That was then.
So now there are 3 things happening in tandem. Number 1 is that I'm making decent money for the first time ever. Number 2 is that I'm watching in real time as the market value of my home explodes. And number 3 is that I'm sitting around alone at home an awful lot and starting to nitpick at the things that bother me. And some of my complaints were valid. Like, because I had a center unit townhouse, the only access to the backyard was through the house, which meant that I literally had to carry my lawnmower through the entire house every time I cut the grass. It also meant that if I wanted to have a deck or something built, I couldn't really, because all of the materials and all the machinery and everything would have to come through the entire house, which wasn't possible. It was a dumb design. My next door neighbor and I had like maybe a foot between our front porches, and she was a smoker, so I couldn't sit outside if she was out there without being smoked out, which really bothered me. Things like that. But some of my complaints were admittedly petty. My kitchen, for example, was very well laid out for the size. I had a ton of cabinets and counter space, but I was dreaming of having this huge kitchen island with a beautiful breakfast bar and a larger backyard with a patio and a barbecue and all these things that were definitely nice to have, but not truly necessary. But as I said, I was making more money, and to me it felt like even more than it was. My house had dramatically increased in value in a very short period of time, and I felt like I could make my dreams a reality. So in March of 2021, after only being in my house for a year and a half, I started my house search all over again. Now this is the part of the story where things start to get messy. Like I said, this is definitely the stupidest thing I've ever done. Pretty much every bad decision you could possibly make in this situation, I made it. But the one thing that even I'm not dumb enough to do is to sit back and let data brokers run wild with all my personal information. With nearly every product you buy, every service you use, and every website you visit nowadays, your personal data is being collected and sold behind your back. Information like your name, your current and past addresses and phone numbers, your occupation, your workplace, your political affiliations, and even details about your family members are posted on those sketchy people search sites and made available to anyone who's willing to pay for them. This makes you vulnerable to all sorts of things like scams, harassing, stalking, doxing, and even identity theft. Like, think about getting into an argument with someone online and having them be able to find out where you live and work and do God knows what with that information. But today's sponsor, Delete Me, has got you covered. They go to work scanning the internet for your information and having it removed from anywhere it doesn't belong, all without you having to lift a finger. Then every quarter, they send you a report letting you know what they found and confirming that it's been taken care of. I've been using Delete Me myself for years now. This is my personal dashboard, and you can see that they've done nearly 10,000